أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا آمنت بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Recite one salawat for me, please. As you probably gathered from Sheikh Khalil's presentation, unfortunately he had to rush over the last few minutes of his presentation. There's a lot of material to cover. But inshallah, in addition to this seminar, throughout the journey in Medina and Mecca, there will be inshallah scholars who will present both the spiritual and technical, I guess, or fiqh masail regarding all of the arkan of Hajj. So inshallah, the reason why we try to present in advance of the journey is to try to prepare before we get there. You will find that even though we have a 21 day journey, inshallah, the days will fly by. And if you haven't gotten yourself ready in advance, it'll be over before you know it. And so, unlike ziyarat, Hajj has a lot of technical aspects. And for those who are going for the very first time, it may seem onerous when we go over the material, inshallah, today, but you will find when you get there that it's not as difficult as it sounds. There's a lot of technical material, but it's not as difficult as it sounds. Inshallah, when you come back and you're speaking to those who have not been before, it will not be as overwhelming a journey as perhaps it may seem today. So, despite the fact that we're going to go over a fair amount of material, do take heart in the fact that there are those who have been like Inayat for over 30 years, and any eventuality that will face there, inshallah, we should be able to address. So to begin with, the masail that I'm going to cover right now are based on the fatwa of Ayatollah Sistani. However, those who are muqalladeen of Agha Khamenei, the masail that inshallah I will cover are common to both. So those who are muqalladeen of Ayatollah Sistani or Ayatollah Khamenei, both of them will cover. Towards the end, there are a couple of slides where there is a little bit of a difference, which we'll inshallah highlight. But are there muqalladeen of anybody other than Ayatollah Sistani and Ayatollah Khamenei in the audience? At least from here physically? No? Okay. Because there are some differences. There are some who are still muqalladeen of Ayatollah Khouy, and there are a little bit more, a few more differences. But inshallah, if that's not the case, then we don't have to worry about those. And Imam Khomeini as well. Those who are still muqalladeen of Imam Khomeini and Ayatollah Khamenei, the masail of Hajj are very similar, so there should be no issue. But Ayatollah Khouy had some stark differences in certain areas. Okay. The conditions that make Hajj wajib on an individual. I'm going to gloss over some of these slides very quickly because we shall inshallah cover them in a little bit more depth. There are some basic conditions. One needs to be an adult, one needs to be sane, there needs to be health, strength, etc. You need to have enough time to be able to go and come back. Your source of livelihood needs to be confirmed or assured so that you're not going to lose your job when you come back. Those kinds of conditions. The one condition that I want to highlight, because we have an issue every year, is that your debt obligations need to be addressed before you leave. Okay, those long-term debt obligations like a mortgage or a student loan are fine because you have a payment plan and you're going to address those. The one specific debt obligation that I want to address, because we have an issue with it every year, is khums. Khums is wajib, and you must address your khums obligation before you leave. Okay, so we've had instances there where we have to deal with the situation, people who come and then tell us, well, we didn't know, what do we do now? Address your khums now. You have a month, you have a financial obligation, address it before you leave, please. Okay? Okay. Hajj, as you probably gathered from Sheikh Khalid's presentation, Hajj is divided into two parts. There is the Umrah part, and then there is the Hajj. Okay? The Umrah Tamattu' has 5 rituals. Ihram, Tawaf, the Salat of Tawaf, the performing of Sa'i, and Taqsir. Okay? So, we'll go over each of these. You'll find that the bulk of the presentation will cover Umrah. Shukran. Thank you. We'll cover Umrah because then there's a lot of similarity. The Tawaf is repeated, Sa'i is repeated, Ihram is repeated, and so on and so forth. So the bulk of the presentation will be in Umrah, and then there are a few other aspects in the Hajj Tamattu' that we'll cover. Ihram. Ihram must be worn at a miqat. And miqat varies from where you are coming. So there are multiple miqats that have been identified. The only one that is relevant to us is Masjid al-Shajara. Because we shall be going to Medina first, inshallah, and we will be going to Makkah from Medina, there is a place called Dhul Hulayfa, which is the miqat for those who are coming from Medina. Masjid al-Shajara is a mosque in Dhul Hulayfa, and we shall inshallah wear our ihram or do our niyyah for ihram in Masjid al-Shajara. As far as ihram is concerned, there are 3 aspects of ihram that are important. One is the clothing of ihram, 2, the niyyah, and 3, the recitation of that phrase, talbiyah, which we shall cover in a moment. Okay. As far as the clothes of ihram are concerned, ladies are able to wear their regular clothes as far as ihram is concerned. Okay? You will find, however, that most women are wearing white. Okay? So they will take their clothes, white clothes, with the white chadar, and they will wear those clothes. However, technically speaking, women can wear regular clothes as far as ihram is concerned. The only restriction is that it cannot be made of silk or leather or gold. That's a technical requirement for women, but otherwise regular clothes suffice. For men, the requirement for ihram is 2 pieces of white cloth, unstitched white cloth, okay? And nothing but, okay, those 2 pieces of white cloth. So no undergarments, nothing, just those 2 pieces of white cloth. One is the shoulder cloth, and the other one is the loin cloth. Inshallah, the techniques of wearing the ihram inshallah will cover in Medina. A lot of people are concerned about, will the ihram hold up? You can be rest assured that the ihram holds up. Okay. The issue is the upper cloth. You'll be surprised. It's not the lower cloth. It's the upper cloth that becomes an issue to handle because when you're praying, when you're walking around, it tends to flip open. But the bottom cloth is actually very secure. Inshallah, there are techniques of how we wear, how we tie the ihram, and there'll be lots of opportunity to go over that. The other thing to remember as far as ihram is concerned, that ihram must be tahir at all times. Okay. Now, there is a difference between ihram that is tahir and ihram that is dirty. Tahir means free of najasa. Okay, so your clothes of ihram will get dirty because the environment is such that it'll get dirty. But taharat means that it must be free of impurities, ritual impurities. Meaning, if you go to the washroom and your ihram becomes dirty, najas, then you're obligated to change as quickly as possible. Or if there is blood on your ihram, then you're obligated to change as quickly as possible. So at all times, your ihram must be tahir. Now, the niyyah for wearing ihram, and you will find that throughout the slides that we will repeat this slide with different rituals. I will spend just a few minutes talking about it for the first slide, and then the other ones are going to be the same except the ritual changes. So just by quick show of hands, how many are going for the very first time? MashaAllah. Okay, so the vast majority are going for the first time. Okay. So generally, people are in one of 3 scenarios. Okay. Either you're going for the very first time and this is your wajib hajj. Okay? In which case, the niyyah that you perform will be like the first niyyah that you see on the screen. That I am wearing this ihram for Umrah tamattu, for Hajjatul Islam, wajib qurbatan ilallah. Okay? And you will find that this theme of performing niyyah in this fashion continues throughout the rituals, because this is your first Hajj, it is for Hajjatul Islam, and it's wajib qurbatan ilallah. So this form of niyyah applies to the vast majority who are going for the first time. If you have been for Hajj before, and you are going for Hajj a second time, for example, then, and you wish to perform this Hajj for yourself, okay? Then the niyyah would be that I am wearing ihram for Umrah tamattu, for Hajj tamattu, qurbatan ilallah. Okay? This could be your second time, your fifth time, 10th time, doesn't matter. You still are performing this Hajj for yourself the nth time. Okay? Hajjatul Islam is only wajib once, which is your first time. That's the second scenario. And the third scenario may be that you have been before, but this time you're going for Hajj and you want the thawab of this Hajj for your parents, your grandparents, marhumin. You want to give the thawab of this Hajj to perhaps the Ahlul Bayt, the Imam of our time, and so on and so forth. In which case then the niyyah will be that I am wearing ihram for Umrah tamattu, for Hajj tamattu on behalf of so and so, qurbatan ilallah. And you can have a long list. You can have 5, 10, 15, 20 names on your list, no problem. Okay? But the list remains static once your Hajj starts. So you can make a list. We recommend that you write down your names if you wish to write down the names. That way you know that you have a list of 20 names and the list is not changing every time you move from one action to the other. Now, the niyyah number 2 and niyyah number 3 does not apply to those who are going for Hajj the first time. If you're going to Hajj the first time, this is your wajib Hajj, you have no choice but to make this Hajj exclusively for yourself and no other than yourself. Okay? This number 2 and number 3 only applies if you have been for Hajj before and you have completed your wajib Hajj. So you cannot perform niyyah to say that I want the thawab of this Hajj to go to the following individuals if you're performing your wajib Hajj. For your wajib Hajj, it can be for nobody else other than yourself. Now, with niyyah, one thing to remember is that while many get stuck on the language and the words, it's really not about the words. It's about the intention. And for all the rituals we perform, even if it is Salat, you don't actually have to verbally pronounce the niyyah, okay, technically speaking. As long as you are consciously aware that the act I am about to perform is the following, and it is, for the qurb of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that alone suffices. You don't have to say that I am wearing the ihram for Umrah tamattu, for Hajjatul Islam, wajib qurbatan ilallah. If you wish to, that's fine. But as long as you're consciously aware, that is what the intention is, then there is no need, technically, to verbally pronounce the niyyah. The clothes of ihram have been worn. Inshallah, what will happen when we arrive in Medina, if we're blessed to be with you, inshallah, then when we arrive in Medina, we will be there for a few days. The day there will be an announcement to say that the following day, inshallah, in the afternoon, we will be leaving for Masjid al-Shajara. What will happen is we will perform our mustahab ghusl, and we'll cover that in Medina. We'll perform our mustahab ghusl in the hotel. We will wear the clothes of ihram in the hotel. We won't do the niyyah, we'll just wear the clothes, because logistically it's very difficult to do all of that in Masjid al-Shajara. We'll wear the clothes, we will get onto the bus. From our hotel to Masjid al-Shajara is about 7-10 kilometers, is not far. We will arrive in Masjid al-Shajara late evening, generally. And we will pray most likely our Maghrib and Isha Salat in Masjid al-Shajara. Then you will be assembled in groups and you'll be told, now do your niyyah. We will do our niyyah and then we will recite this phrase of talbiyah. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, innal hamda wan ni'mata laka wal mulk, la sharika laka labbaik. This phrase, when it's recited, it's like the takbiratul ihram of salat. When you do your salat, when you stand up for salat and you do your niyyah, and then you say Allahu Akbar, the first Allahu Akbar. When you do your first Allahu Akbar, from that point onwards, certain things become prohibited to you because now you are in the middle of Salat. In the same way, when this phrase is recited after Niyyah of Ihram, then there are 25 things that become haram on someone who is now in the state of Ihram. Okay? This phrase should be recited loudly for men. Women can recite it softly. And it is recommended that it is repeated as often as you can from the time you recite it the very first time until you reach the outskirts of Makkah. Okay? It is recommended. The journey from Medina to Makkah varies in length because of the traffic, because of the checkpoints that we have to stop at. It's approximately a 400 plus kilometer journey. Okay? But it can take 5 hours, it can take 10 hours, depending on congestion on the road, as well as there are passport checkpoints, etc. So, inshallah, when we get there, it is what it is. It varies from year to year. It's not a very long journey, but it can become a long journey based on circumstances. Okay, so there are. You've probably, if you haven't gone through the slides, I see some of them have gotten them printed, but you have the slides. You can go through these again. I will not spend a lot of time on all of the Muharamat. Some of them are very obvious and self-explanatory. There are a few that I wish to speak about. So I will only cover a few of them because the other ones are very basic. There are a few that are technical in nature, and those I will cover, but the others, inshallah, we can talk about at some other time, inshallah. So hunting and killing insects. So we don't generally hunt, but killing insects. In the state of Ihram, you cannot kill an insect. You cannot swat a fly or a mosquito or anything like that. You can flick it away, you can move it away, you can walk away, but you can't kill an insect in the state of Ihram. Intimacy with one's spouse. Okay, there are a lot of restrictions. You don't see 25 listed here, but there are several that are grouped together. Intimacy with one's spouse in the state of Ihram is prohibited. Okay, reciting nikah in the state of Ihram, again, we don't generally do this, is not permitted. Unacceptable, certain kinds of unacceptable social interaction. Getting angry, swearing, lying, cheating, those kinds of behavior, which is generally haram to begin with, not permitted in the state of Ihram. Carrying arms, again, we don't carry, swords and guns, etc., but in the state of Ihram, those are not permitted. Okay, a few others I want to cover in a little bit more detail. Sewn clothes, wearing sewn clothes. In the state of Ihram, we said earlier that the clothes for Ihram for men are 2 pieces of plain, unstitched white cloth. This can be purchased in Madinatul Munawwara. So if you have it from here, you can take it. Otherwise, available at every corner in Medina, and it costs 30 riyals, which is $10 approximately. Okay, very cheap, but available at any corner in Medina for men. Women generally, it is difficult, and so they will arrange for their clothes of ihram from here. So for men, we are not allowed to wear any stitched clothes in the state of ihram. We cannot tie knots on either piece of our ihram, the bottom piece or the upper piece. Safety pins. We cannot apply a safety pin on the lower piece of ihram, which is the piece that I think everybody is concerned about on the men's side. But as I said, the lower piece is secure. It's the upper piece that tends to flip open when you go into ruku, etc. For that, if you wish, you can apply a safety pin to hold it together, the 2 pieces of the cloth together. Ladies can wear sewn clothes, as I said, no problem. The only restriction, other than not wearing silk and gold, etc., is that you cannot wear gloves in the state of ihram. Looking at the mirror in the state of ihram is not permitted for both ladies and gents if it is intended to be a look for the purposes of beautification. If you happen to unintentionally glance at the mirror, there are mirrors in the elevator, and you're going up the elevator in the state of ihram when we arrive in Medina, and you happen to glance at the mirror, no problem, right? It's a reflective surface. But if you glance at the mirror and then you decide that you want to fix your hair or whatever, that becomes a glance of beautification. And for each of these infractions, okay, there are different infractions. There are 25 muharramat, depending on the circumstances. Some of them have a penalty, some of them don't have a penalty. And we don't want to spend time talking about each of the penalties. Inshallah, none of these infractions will occur. But if they do occur, there's always a solution. Okay, for some of them it is there's no penalty. For some you have to slaughter an animal as a kafara, and that can happen even after we come back. But be cautious. Don't take the muharramat lightly. The purpose is not to say, well, if there's an infraction, inshallah, we'll pay the kafara. No, you have done something haram, and so the objective is to try to avoid the muharramat to begin with, as opposed to saying, I'll pay the kafara after. That isn't the objective. Recognize that you have done something wrong. And so, understand what it is that is haram, and take the necessary steps that you need to avoid that which is haram in the state of ihram. Okay? Covering of the feet for men. For women, wearing obviously socks, is wajib in the state of hijab, and therefore you have to cover your feet. As far as men are concerned, however, we are not allowed to cover our feet in its entirety in the state of ihram. And therefore you cannot, obviously we're wearing the two pieces of cloth, you cannot wear socks, you cannot wear shoes, you can wear slippers, but the slippers should not cover the entire upper part of your foot. Okay, so you can wear flip-flops, for example, or you can wear sandals. You can wear stitched sandals. Sandals is not a problem. You can wear those sandals that have two straps, okay, where a portion of the upper part of the foot is exposed. That is sufficient. But you cannot wear Crocs, for example, where almost the entire upper part of the foot is covered, or you wear a sandal where almost the entire upper part of your foot is covered. There has to be a portion of the upper part of your foot that is open in the state of ihram. Now, if you're sleeping, for example, this is for men, if you're sleeping in the evening and your ihram tends to cover your foot, or you have a blanket or whatever, and that covers your foot, that is fine. But otherwise, you cannot be wearing anything that covers your foot while in the state of ihram. Beautification of other forms. Use of perfume. Okay? Again, as a means of beautification, is not permitted in the state of ihram. The aroma from food or fruits, you can eat and consume foods that have an aroma to them, but you cannot be focused on the aroma from the food. Okay, so these are some of the sort of technical aspects of the use of fragrances and odors, etc. If you have a situation where there's foul odor, you go to the washroom, this washroom is being used by thousands and thousands of people, and there is, the facilities are a lot better than they used to be years ago, but there's still a little bit of an odor when you go to the washroom, as you can imagine. If for some reason you find the stench unbearable, you can walk away, but you cannot plug your nose in those circumstances. Okay. Other forms of beautification for women, if you wear kohol or surma, again, it's a form of beautification. You cannot have that form of beautification while in the state of ihram. Again, the idea you will find that if you spend some time to think about the spiritual dimensions of each of these prohibitions, you will find that at the end of the day, the idea is utmost simplicity. That, as Sheikh Khalil talked about earlier, it doesn't matter who you are back home. It doesn't matter where you come from. When you go there, we're all the same. And it doesn't matter whether you come from the West and you're a millionaire, or you come from a different part of the world and you have barely managed to put together enough money for that once-in-a-lifetime journey. There's no difference. We're all dressed the same, all dressed in white, all performing the same arkan of Hajj. Whether you are, wear designer clothes back home or can barely put food on the table, it doesn't make a difference. The idea is utmost simplicity, because look at who you are appearing before. This is the purpose of the journey, right? All of these rituals, we get bogged down on, well, we shouldn't put perfume, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that. Understand why. The idea is the simplicity, because before Him, what I have in this world is immaterial. That's not what makes the worth of an individual. And that's the purpose when if you think about all of these prohibitions, that's one of the underlying themes of these prohibitions. Jewelry. You cannot wear jewelry in the state of ihram. Okay? Exceptions. For women, if there are certain forms of jewelry that you wear on a regular basis, let's say you wear a necklace all the time, year round you have that necklace that you wear, no problem. You can wear that if you wish in ihram. Okay? Men, okay? Aqiq rings, for example. Many of us wear an aqiq ring. Okay? It is mustahab to wear the ring. You are allowed to wear the aqiq ring in ihram. However, you will find that many, even in ihram, will take all of these off. Why? Because the idea is simplicity. You can wear it if you wish, there's no problem. The idea is simplicity when you appear before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so many will take off the standard jewelry that they wear. They take off their watches, they take off their rings, because you don't want any distraction, whether you're wearing a ring or a watch, where you begin to think, my watch is more expensive than someone else's watch. All of these you'll find are distractions when you get there. And so if you can be dressed as simply as possible, just the 2 clothes of ihram and nothing else, it'll go a long way even for yourself as you go through this journey. Applying oil, obviously not allowed in the state of ihram. If you have a medical condition that requires you to apply some sort of ointment, for example, that is permitted because it is for medicinal reasons. But if you don't have a medical condition, you cannot apply anything on yourself. You cannot apply anything on yourself preventatively either. Okay? If you don't have a recurring condition from home, let's say, but you get there and then all of a sudden you develop a rash while you're in ihram, after developing the rash, then if you have to apply an ointment, no problem. But you cannot apply something preventatively to say, well, in case I get a rash, then in order to avoid that, I will apply the ointment in advance. And for men, you will find that this is a common issue, because when we are in the state of ihram, and because of the heat and the sweat, and you're only wearing those 2 pieces of cloth, when you're walking, and there's a lot of walking to do, there is a chafing between the thighs. Okay, and for some people, it causes a rash. For some men, it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen to everybody, and so you cannot apply something in anticipation of that happening. Okay, so you can apply ointments or medicine if in fact you have a condition that warrants it, but otherwise you cannot. Cutting of nails, you cannot cut your nails unless obviously there's an absolute intense reason to do so, but otherwise you cannot. Removing hair from yourself. You cannot pluck hair from your head or from your hands or from wherever while in the state of ihram. If, however, during wudu, when we are doing wudu, for example, for men, if hair falls off from your beard or from your head while doing wudu or ghusl, etc., then that's fine. But otherwise, you cannot intentionally, remove hair from the body. Covering your head for men is not permitted in the state of ihram. So what does this mean? This means that you cannot wear a hat. Okay, for men, you cannot cover your head in any way while in the state of ihram. Some of the maraji' consider the ear to be part of the head. Okay, and therefore, what that means is that you will find that many of the volunteers are holding their phone in an awkward way. Right? It's because we don't want to cover our entire ear with the phone. So we'll hold it at a distance, or you'll hold it in such a way that your entire ear is not covered while in the state of ihram. For women, you're not allowed to cover your face in ihram. So for those women, for example, who wear a niqab on a regular basis, in ihram you cannot cover your face. Okay, this is one of the requirements of Hajj, that your face must be open in the state of ihram. And then for both men and women, you cannot immerse your head in water. For men, traveling in a shaded bus is not permitted if you are covering or protecting yourself from the sun or rain. Okay, this is the reason why I said earlier that we will leave for Masjid al-Shajara in the evening, and then we will leave for Makkah after Maghrib and Isha, because men cannot seek protection while traveling in a shaded bus to protect themselves from the sun or rain. So we're leaving at night because the sun is out already, and that is the reason why specifically you will find that throughout the journey, whenever we are in ihram, we plan in such a way that we are not traveling during the day so as to avoid the kafara. Those who are muqallidin of Sayyid al-Khu'i, for example, this becomes an issue because he did not allow it even at night. Okay, but in those days there used to be open buses people used to travel in. Today they are not readily available, so this becomes an issue for muqallidin of Sayyid al-Khu'i. When you arrive at your destination, then seeking shelter is not a problem. It's traveling under shade that is problematic. So when we arrive at our hotel and it's daytime and the sun is out, no problem, because you are allowed to seek shelter if you're not moving or traveling. If you're walking and there is shade from the building or from a car or from whatever, then there's no problem. Okay, but you cannot carry an umbrella, for example, while you're walking. And you will find that on the day of Eid, when we are walking from our tents to Jamarat, it is a scorching day, okay? And you will find that brothers and sisters from the Ahl Sunnah are carrying an umbrella. You have to be cautious not to consciously take shade from an umbrella, okay? So it is a hot day, but it is one of those days that is challenging. But we are not allowed, as one of the conditions of ihram, to seek the shade while traveling. This is an issue for men. It's not an issue for ladies. To cause yourself to bleed or to extract one's tooth in the state of ihram, also not permitted. When we talk about causing yourself to bleed, what we mean is scratching, for example. So if you scratch, and if you know for a fact that when you scratch, maybe your skin condition is such that when you scratch it'll bleed, then you need to avoid that. But if it's an unintentional issue where you happen to scratch yourself and then you start bleeding, that's okay. It's anything that is done consciously, that you know for a fact that I tend to bleed when I scratch, then you should avoid it. Extraction of of a tooth obviously is not permitted. When you're brushing, if you happen to bleed while you're brushing, that is not a problem. Okay, it's obviously unintentional. This picture was taken many, many years ago. I think it was probably my first Hajj. The condition of the haram is similar to this again. For a few years there used to be ramps because they were expanding the construction, but the ramps have come down, and so the area of the haram has expanded from what it was. But inshallah, when we arrive, you will see a sea of people. So we will arrive in Makkah, inshallah, depending on how long it takes us for the journey, in the wee hours of the morning. Okay, depending on how long it is taken. Normally what we do is, depending on how much time there is between the time we arrive and Fajr time, we will take the group for Umrah, okay, if there is sufficient time. If there isn't sufficient time, then we will recommend waiting until after Fajr, because at the time of Salat, there are thousands of people who come for prayers. Okay, it becomes very difficult to perform the Tawaf and Sa'i when people are coming to pray. Okay, so you will have to bear with us. We don't know for sure when we will do our Umrah, because it all depends on when we arrive. and there'll be multiple buses going from Medina to Mecca. Inshallah, I think our group is about 250 strong this year from different parts of the world. Each bus will be on its own. Okay, there will be volunteers, organizers on every bus, and each bus will decide what they will do when they arrive. If Inayat Bhai's bus arrives, early in the morning at 1 o'clock, there's plenty of time before Fajr. He will take his group and go for Hajj, for Umrah. And if our bus, for example, arrives, an hour before Fajr, it's impossible. The crowds for Salat set in an hour before, if not more, because people are coming for Salatul Layl. And so, depending on how late it is, it actually may make sense logistically to wait for an hour after Fajr, because at the end of the day, look, it's not a sprint to the finish. We want to make sure, while everybody wants to get out of Ihram because of the restrictions, the idea is take your time. There is no rush to finish. It's not a race to the finish. You want to make sure that you perform the rituals of Hajj in a manner where you have taken something spiritually out of it. It's not a matter of just completing the rituals and saying, done, check, 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 finished, Ihram over. No, that's not the intention. The idea is take your time. It's not a rush to finish. Right? If there isn't enough time, we'll wait. Respect the recommendations of the volunteers because they have done it for so many years. If they tell you it's not practical right now, sometimes what they will do, and it's happened before, is that they will tell you, look, go to your hotel room. We will go and finish our Umrah, and then we will come and take you after. Because that way we know that our obligations are completed, and then we'll sit and wait. You take your time, it takes you an hour, 2 hours to finish your Umrah, we'll wait for you, and then we'll bring you back to the hotel. Okay? But it'll vary. There's no cookie cutter approach. It varies from year to year, from bus to bus, inshallah, when we arrive. Recite one salat to me, please. We arrive in Makkah, and now we go to the Haram. The second ritual for Umrah is Tawaf. And there are 5 conditions for Tawaf. The first is the niyyah. The second is ritual purity, meaning one has to be in wudu. The third is physical purity, meaning one has to be free of najasa. Circumcision is a requirement for men, and covering of one's private parts is also a requirement for Tawaf. Now, I will go through this niyyah one more time, and then for all the other slides, I'll skip over it. If this is your first Hajj, the niyyah is going to be that I am performing Tawaf of the Kaaba, going 7 times around the Kaaba for Umrah Tamattu, for Hajjatul Islam, Wajib, Qurbatan ilallah. Okay? That is the niyyah for the vast majority of those in attendance today. Okay? And you have the slides, they were emailed out, so you can review the niyyah again. Inshallah, if you have any questions, we can address your specific questions as far as niyyah is concerned. So, the 5 obligations for Tawaf. Number 1, niyyah. Number 2, ritual purity. Tahara, you have to be in the state of wudu. There are certain acts in Hajj that must be performed in wudu. Tawaf is one of those. Okay? The other rituals, so Tawaf and the Salat are the 2 rituals that must be performed in the state of wudu. Obviously, we pray in wudu. But all the other rituals, you can be in wudu, but you don't have to be in wudu. Tawaf is one of those that you have to be. Now, if you are performing your Tawaf and your wudu breaks while you are in the midst of Tawaf, then you need to remember this rule. It's called the rule of 4. Yeah? If your wudu breaks prior to the completion of your 4th round, then your Tawaf is null and void. You come out, you go to wudu, you come back, you start afresh. Okay? If your wudu breaks after the completion of the 4th round, you come out, you do wudu, you come back, and you resume from where you left off. Okay? So remember this rule of 4. There are also then, further details on whether the wudu is broken voluntarily or involuntarily. Inshallah, that we'll cover in detail when we get to Medina. Right now, I don't want to spend too much time because I'm watching the clock. Tahara as far as physical purity is concerned. We said earlier that if your clothes of ihram become najis, then you're obligated to change your clothes of ihram as quickly as possible. If you physically get najis, for example, you start bleeding, people will step on your feet while you're in tawaf because of the just sheer crowd. Nobody's doing it intentionally. It's just a sheer crowd. People are swaying, people are moving, in and out. You'll find that it's quite busy in tawaf, and unintentionally people will stomp on your feet. And if you start bleeding, or if you have a safety pin and you get poked, then you may start bleeding. If you become najis physically, or your clothes of ihram become najis, the same rule of 4 applies. If it happened before the 4th round is completed, you come out, you cleanse yourself of the najasat, you come back and you start afresh. If it happened after the 4th round, you still come out, you cleanse yourself, you come back and you resume from where you left off. Okay? Now, there are 8 obligations as far as the tawaf itself is concerned. The first is that every round of tawaf begins at Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone. And you will find that when the volunteers who are taking you to the haram, and for those who have not been for the very first time, we will inshallah try to orient you. We get there, it's not a rush to go and do tawaf. We will stop and we will point out where Hajar al-Aswad is, where Maqam Ibrahim is, where Hijr of Ismail alayhi salam is, and so on, so that you have your bearings. You need to know where to start from, where to finish, where to pray your namaz, etc. Hajar al-Aswad is where the tawaf begins. And so if this podium, for example, was a square or a cube which represented the Kaaba, if this is where Hajar al-Aswad is, if this corner is, what generally people do is they will perform their niyyah just before they arrive at Hajar al-Aswad, just before they get to that corner, okay? Such that now they're ensuring that they have performed their niyyah just before they cross Hajar al-Aswad. Okay, you cross Hajar al-Aswad and now your first round has begun. Okay, you go all around the Kaaba, and when you get to Hajar al-Aswad again, that is where your first round is completed. So the round begins at Hajar, the round ends at Hajar. Okay, so that is one round. The third obligation is that the left shoulder, or your left shoulder, must be pointing towards the Kaaba at all times. Okay, so you will see that we are performing tawaf in a counterclockwise fashion, and that also has a spiritual significance as to why we do it counterclockwise as opposed to clockwise, but that for some other day, inshallah. So we perform our tawaf with the left shoulder constantly pointing towards the Kaaba. In the rush of performing tawaf, there is a possibility that you get disoriented. Okay, you get pushed, you get shoved. If you get to a point where now, let's say your right shoulder, you're facing the opposite way, your right shoulder is facing the Kaaba, or your back is facing the Kaaba, or your front is facing the Kaaba, and your left shoulder is not, in the right position. If you move in that disoriented position for a few steps, then that becomes an issue. So there are two ways to resolve that. Okay? Option one, move your way back. That's not going to happen. Okay? This is one of those things that, the books of Masail say, you retrace your steps back and then you resume. It's impossible, right? Umrah maybe. Hajj, not possible, right? So what happens? If I took, let's say, 5 steps while facing the Kaaba as opposed to my left shoulder facing the Kaaba, I go around, that round doesn't count, and I resume from where I got disoriented. Okay? Simple. Because retracing the steps is not practical. You go around, don't count that round doesn't count, and then you just resume from where you left off. Okay? But the entire tawaf must be performed with the left shoulder pointing to the Kaaba. You will see that there are minarets throughout the haram. If you are looking at the minarets and you keep going around the Kaaba with the minarets in mind or in sight, automatically you will find your left shoulder is pointing. Okay? It's not that difficult. I mean, as much as it sounds like people get pushed and shoved, it doesn't happen very often where you get so disoriented that you're facing the Kaaba or your back is at the Kaaba. But in case it does, it's very simple. Just ignore that walk all the way around and you resume from where you got disoriented. You'll find that there's a semicircle. It's called the Hijr of Ismail alayhi salam. One must perform your tawaf outside the ambit of Hijr of Ismail alayhi salam. You cannot go cut through of Hijr of Ismail alayhi salam. You have to go around that semicircle when performing tawaf. The tawaf must be performed between the Kaaba and Maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam. You'll find that there is a structure, a golden structure that has the footprints of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. And it is recommended to perform your tawaf between the Kaaba and Maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam. For those who are elderly, right, you may find it difficult to perform between the Kaaba and Maqam. And so it is allowed, if you wish to perform it outside. However, it is recommended to do it between the Kaaba and Maqam. A couple of quick pieces of advice. You will find that it is, while it may seem difficult because there's a lot more rush between the Kaaba and Maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam, it is actually very feasible to do. Okay? The closer you are to the Kaaba, if you're like 5 people in, 7 people in, you will find that there is less rush if you're that close to the Kaaba. If you are towards the outskirts of the Kaaba and Maqam, there's a lot of pushing and shoving, especially when you get to Hajar al-Aswad, because people are coming to kiss the black stone and then they're rushing out, and it becomes difficult because you see the crowds swaying, people coming to touch, people leaving, etc. But if you're close to the Kaaba, 2 things are, one, you'll find a sense of peace, okay, and serenity. You'll actually be able to do your tawaf reasonably well, okay, without a lot of pushing and shoving. Number 2, the round is much shorter. Much, much shorter. You can do the round from the outskirts of the Sahan. It's a long, long walk, okay? If you don't want to get pushed and shoved, yeah, by all means, you can do that, okay? But the closer you are to the Kaaba, the round becomes shorter as well. You can actually do it peacefully, and it becomes much, much shorter, okay? The Shadharwan, the underpinning structure of the Kaaba, you will find, is called the Shadharwan. One is not allowed, while performing tawaf, to touch the Shadharwan or the Kaaba while performing tawaf. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that if I am performing tawaf, okay, and it happens to all of us, whether you're there for the first time or the nth time, just the sight of the Kaaba is something to behold, even if you've been there tons of times before, right? It's just an overwhelming experience, however many times you go. So you're performing your tawaf, and you find in the midst of your tawaf, there's an opening to touch the Kaaba. Take it. There's no problem. Okay? But you cannot perform tawaf while touching the Kaaba and walking. That's the problem. If you have an opening, and even it may be your wajib tawaf because you're performing tawaf for Umrah and you're overcome with the opportunity, it's your first time and you want to touch the Kaaba, you don't know if you'll get a chance again, go for it. There's no problem. But if you go for it, you go, stop, touch the Kaaba, spend 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever you want, you recite your du'as, be respectful of the fact that others want to also touch the Kaaba. You come out and you resume from where you had stopped. Okay? So what this restriction is that you cannot be performing tawaf while touching the Kaaba. But you can go and stop. You can recite your du'as, you can touch the ghilaf, you can touch the ghilaf is typically raised at that time because they're getting ready to replace it, but you can touch the wall of the Kaaba, and then you come back and you resume from where you left off. Rounds around the Kaaba. 7. Each tawaf means 7 rounds around the Kaaba. So as we said earlier, you start at Hajar al-Aswad, you go all around, that's 1 round, and then you keep going until your 7 rounds are completed. Now, you must perform exactly 7 rounds. You cannot throw in 1 for good measure, right? If you have a doubt, now, and people sometimes are doubtful as to, is it my 3rd or my 4th? 5th or 6th. If you have a doubt about which round you're on in a wajib tawaf, the tawaf is null and void. You have to be certain that this is my third round, now fourth round, fifth round, sixth round, whatever. So that you're certain that 7 rounds are completed. If you are going with a friend or your wife or your mother, and you have a doubt, is it my third or fourth? And she says to you, I am certain it is our third, your doubt is resolved. Okay? You can rely on someone else's count. If you have been together all along, obviously, and she says to you, it's third for sure, absolutely no doubt it's third round, then you, as far as you're concerned, your doubt is resolved. Okay? So, but you need to be certain about the number of rounds you have completed in a wajib tawaf. In the case of a mustahab tawaf are those tawafs that we shall perform between after Umrah is over and we have a few days before we leave for Hajj. There's plenty of time to go for sunnah tawafs. If in a mustahab or sunnah tawaf you have a doubt, is it my third or fourth, fifth or sixth, you take the lower number and you continue on. Okay? But that rule only applies in a mustahab tawaf. In a wajib tawaf, there can be no doubt. There has to be certainty as to the number of rounds, and you can only do 7 rounds while performing your wajib tawaf. You have to complete your tawaf without considerable interruption. If you need to take a break for whatever reason, there are seniors who are tired and need to come out of the congestion, need to take a break. You can take a short 5-10 minute break, no problem. But the idea is that if I were to look at you and realize that you're actually taking a break, you cannot be taking such a long break that I don't know, that I wouldn't realize that you're actually in the midst of tawaf. Okay? If you take a short break, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, no problem. You come back, you resume from where you left off. How long does it take to finish your tawaf? It depends. If you're close to Kaaba, you can be done in half an hour, or maybe even less. If you're on the outskirts, it can take you an hour and a half. Okay? So, if you are between Kaaba and Maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam, I would say, depending on how you're moving, and depending on the crowds, between 35 to 50 minutes. Okay? 7 rounds. Okay? And if you're doing it between Kaaba and Maqam. The further out you are, the longer it takes. Tawaf must be performed with free movement. Meaning that for those of us who are able-bodied, we have to be walking. If you get such a large crowd behind you, and you get lifted off your feet because of the crowds, then the same rule applies that we talked about when we said if you get disoriented. If you move around the Kaaba a certain number of steps off your feet, then you either retrace backwards, which is not going to happen, you go around and you resume your tawaf from where you got lifted off your feet. The exception to this rule is for those seniors, for example, who are just not able to walk. They need a wheelchair. For them, obviously, it's not free movement. For seniors, performing tawaf on the ground floor in a wheelchair is not possible because they don't allow it. The crowds are so large that they do not allow wheelchairs on the ground floor in Hajj, in Umrah maybe. The upper floors, I believe, we have to check, but I believe the first floor these days is below. So the issue is that you cannot perform your tawaf above the Kaaba. Okay, so you will find some of our Ahl Sunnah brothers performing it on the rooftop, okay, or on the second floor. For us, we're not allowed to do that because it is above the Kaaba, and one of the requirements for us to do tawaf is that it cannot be above the Kaaba. So we are not allowed to perform it, even a mustahab tawaf, on the rooftop. So just a couple of quick pictures that give you sort of a sense of what the structure looks like. You'll have the Hajar al-Aswad in one corner. Right next to that, a little distance away, is the Maqam of Ibrahim. And then when you go around is where that semicircle is for the Hajar of Ismail. And that's where the door of the Kaaba is as well. So you get, all of these, landmarks in the Sahan are very close to one another. And that's really how you're performing your tawaf from an aerial view. You're ideally performing it between the Hajar and between the Kaaba and Maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and going around the Hajar of Ismail. That's just another quick picture. Okay. After you have performed your tawaf, The next ritual, which is now the third ritual of Umrah Tamattu', is the reciting of 2 rakat salat. Okay, the 2 rakat salat, again the niyyah we won't cover. 2 rakat salat, like any other salat, you must be in the state of wudu. You have just performed your tawaf, you're probably still in the state of wudu, inshallah. You recite your 2 rakat salat. It is recommended to recite your 2 rakat salat behind the maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Okay, as close to maqam as possible. You will find that there is actually a designated place. Everybody is reciting the 2 rakat salat there. Whether you are, even the Ahl Sunnah brothers, sisters are also reciting their salat in that area. And so you will find it roped off. Okay, it's behind maqam. You get to as close to maqam as possible as you can, but that's a designated area. You cannot recite namaz anywhere else because there are people in the midst of tawaf. And so they have this designated area. You go, you recite your 2 rakat salat, and you get out because there are thousands and thousands of people who are waiting to recite their 2 rakat salat as well. The 2 rakat salat, again, in the state of wudu, is recited like Fajr salat. There's nothing unique about it. Just your first surah, second surah, it doesn't matter. But just like Fajr prayers, your 2 rakat salat. The niyyah, obviously, is that you're reciting this 2 rakat salat for the salat of tawaf. If it is for your wajib hajj, for hajjatul Islam, wajib qurbatan ilallah. It is recommended to recite this 2 rakat salat as soon as you can after the completion of tawaf. So most people, what they will do is immediately after, you will make your way out from once you finished your 7th round and you finish it just after Hajar al-Aswad, you gradually make your way out, you find a spot where everybody is praying, you recite your 2 rakat salat, and your third ritual or third obligation for Umrah is complete. Now, at this point, if you wish to break and go back to the hotel, you can. Okay? Sa'i and taqsir are the last 2 rituals for Umrah Tamattu'. Sa'i must be performed on the same day on which you performed your tawaf and salat of tawaf. But there can be a gap if you wish. Okay? So we will inshallah perform our tawaf, salat of tawaf early in the morning. Maybe before Fajr, maybe just after Fajr. If you're tired and you say, you know what, I don't have the energy to go and do my sa'i, you can go home. You can go to the hotel. The hotel is just a 10-minute walk. It's not far. But you're obligated to come back sometime later in the day to perform your sa'i. Okay? Sa'i. Sa'i is just going back and forth between the 2 mountains, Safa and Marwa. The total journey between Safa and Marwa 7 times is about 3.5 kilometers, approximately. Okay? These rituals need to be performed in sequence. So you wear your ihram, obviously, in Medina, then you have to perform tawaf, then you recite your 2 rakat salat, then sa'i. You cannot mix up the sequence in which these rituals are performed. It has to be performed in sequence. So sa'i consists of 7 laps. Okay? You start at the mountain of Safa. Everybody starts at Safa. And then you go from Safa to Marwa, that's 1. Marwa to Safa is 2. Safa to Marwa is 3, and so on and so forth. Because it's an odd number, you end up at Marwa. So you will start at Safa and you will finish at Marwa. It's 7 laps. Just make sure that, some people were counting it, going back and forth, and then there's confusion, and they do 14 laps, and then they have to go back and do it again because it doesn't count, and so on and so forth. 7 laps means Safa to Marwa is 1, Marwa to Safa is 2, and so on and so forth until you finish at Marwa. You have the rules of sa'i are similar to tawaf as far as doubts are concerned. You have to be certain that you are doing 7 laps. Okay? And now here you would be, if there was a doubt, you'd be doubting, is this my 3rd or 5th? 5th or 7th? Because of the direction in which you're going. It has to be either odd or even. Again, the same rule applies. If you're with someone and they're certain about which lap you're on, you rely on their count and you're done. It is recommended to walk briskly. And again, there's a significance as to why we walk briskly between Safa and Marwa. There are various, hadiths that talk about sort of the spiritual dimensions of that walk from Safa to Marwa. And inshallah, Sheikh Jafar covered a little bit of it. Inshallah, we'll cover some more of it in Medina. Again, if you choose to interrupt your sa'i for whatever reason, you're tired, there's Zamzam water available. If you want to break, you drink some water. You can take a 5-10 minute break as long as there's not a considerable interruption in your sa'i. Okay? If you are so exhausted after tawaf and you don't think you can get your sa'i done, take a break for an hour. Sit in the haram if you wish, go to the hotel if you wish, until you're ready to start your sa'i. Like I said, this is not a race to the finish. The idea is to make sure that you perform the rituals such that you benefit spiritually from the act itself, as opposed to just completing the ritual for the sake of completing the ritual. Sa'i, like tawaf, must be performed under the mountains. So the upper floor, they have a floor right above the mountains of Safa and Marwa, the highest floor, the upper floor. You cannot perform sa'i on that very upper floor because it is above the mountains of Safa and Marwa. So sa'i must be performed either on the main floor or in the basement. There's actually a basement now that they built a few years ago, and you can perform your sa'i there. Inshallah, we'll talk about, they've also expanded horizontally Safa and Marwa sa'i area, and there are restrictions on where to do your sa'i, but inshallah, we'll cover that when we get there, because it's not necessarily to cover it here. We've talked about the doubts. You'll also find, you'll see those 2 green lines. They're actually green overhead lights. Okay, for men, it is recommended to trot. Okay, we were walking briskly to begin with, but for men it is recommended to trot between those 2 green lights. Okay, and again, there's a historical significance of why we do that, but suffice it to say that it's recommended to trot between those 2 green lights. Once your sa'i is completed, the last obligation for Umrah Tamattu is taqsir. Taqsir meaning clipping of the hair or nails. Recommended to clip hair actually, as opposed to nails. And you can do it from your beard, from your head. It can be done. It does not need you don't need to be in the state of wudu. You will find people with scissors on the mountain of Marwa. You can borrow a pair of scissors. You can snip your own hair. You cannot cut someone else's hair while you're still in the state of ihram. So you can clip your own hair. Once you've clipped your hair, then you can clip your friend's hair, etc. But you must make sure that you are out of the state of ihram. As soon as you clip your hair, you've done your niyyah and you clip your hair, you are technically now out of ihram. You may still be wearing the clothes of ihram until you get to the hotel, but technically you are no longer in ihram. You don't have to do it on the mountain of Marwa. You can go to the hotel. If you can't find a pair of scissors, you're tired, you just need to get back, you go to the hotel. Make sure, if you go to the hotel and you have not done your taqsir, you're still technically in ihram. All of the restrictions about looking in the mirror and beautifying yourself and so on and so forth are all in place until you do your niyyah and your taqsir. And once you do that, you're now out of ihram. Your first part of Hajj, the Umrah Tamattu, is complete. And all the prohibitions, as I said, are lifted. So recite 1 salawat for me, please. So, just a quick recap. 5 rituals of Umrah Tamattu: the Ihram, the Tawaf, the 2 rakat Salat that follows Tawaf, the Sa'i, going back and forth between Safa and Marwa, and the Taqsir, which is the clipping of the hair or the nails. We will then be in Makkah, inshallah, for a few days. What do we do between the time Umrah is completed and we start Hajj? It is a time, you can go to the Haram as many times as you want. This is a time when you can perform your mustahab tawaf, you can go and pray in the Haram, etc. You cannot perform another Umrah or anything like that because you're now in the midst of your Hajj. So you cannot do anything else other than mustahab tawafs. Okay, and there are so many ahadith that talk about the thawab associated with these mustahab tawafs. Inshallah, we cover that there. But a lot of thawab, a lot of reward for performing mustahab tawafs for yourself, for your parents, family members, alive, marhum, doesn't matter. And you can have as many names, I guess, on your list as you wish. But inshallah, that is what most people do. They'll find opportunities, and you'll find people go for tawaf at different times. Sometimes after Fajr is a good time, late at night is a good time where the crowds are a little less and you want to take advantage of some peace and quiet while performing your Tawaf. On the 8th of Dhul Hajj, it is called the day of Tarwiyah. Okay? Hajj begins on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, but what we do logistically is we start moving towards Arafah on the 8th. Okay, the night of the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, or the night of the 8th, or I guess night of the 9th, but late in the day of the 8th. Our hotel, alhamdulillah, is very close to Haram. Okay, it's actually literally a 7 to 10 minute walk. You go down the hill and you're at the Haram. It is recommended, we talked about a miqat for wearing your ihram. The miqat of wearing your ihram for Hajj is Masjid al-Haram. Okay, and so we would do our ghusl, mustahab ghusl. You would wear your clothes of ihram in the hotel. Just technically, you're just wearing the clothes. You're not in ihram as yet. And then we go to the Haram. You'll be told what time to be ready by. You'll go to the Haram. Recommended to recite 2 rakat Salat, mustahab, behind Maqam of Ibrahim or in Hijra Ismail alayhi salam, and then you do your niyyah. Okay, you do your niyyah. Again, the restrictions for ihram are identical. So